Divine Source, Great Spirit, we come this day open to receive. We come with willingness to be shown another way, willingness to be led into new territory for our healing and as a contribution to the whole. Please speak to us and through us for the highest good, and so it is.
Welcome to Talking Spirit. My name is Jutta, and I'm back with my lovely friend Elizabeth.
Greetings, everyone.
Welcome back. We are coming today with a really beautiful theme, I feel like. When Elizabeth was just doing her little prayer, it just felt like all this warmth was coming up in my heart around it. So it seems pretty exciting. I got an email yesterday from Elizabeth, and she proposed a topic, and the topic was not judging by appearances. And we have this little document where we kind of put down some ideas that come to mind for these recordings. And a couple of days ago, I looked at it, and that topic is actually on there, and it kind of popped out as well in my mind, but wasn't fully clear. But I like the synchronicity of it. And this morning, just in prayer around today's recording, I was sitting outside and I heard, "Don't judge a book by its cover." So those two things kind of go hand in hand. And yeah, just kind of going into this idea a little bit of not judging our brothers by their appearances, and perhaps even going into other aspects of this whole idea and how it might show up on the spiritual path. And yeah, maybe share our own experiences too around what we've seen happen when we let the inner guidance teach us what's occurring in front of us, and not put so much faith into what our eyes are reporting back and our ears are reporting back. I'm excited to see where the Spirit's going to take us today with it.
As you said, we've had this one floating around for a while now, really. And yesterday I was coming back from the library and I saw a car getting ready to turn, and it was so slow making its turn. And as I got closer up to it, I saw the license plate, and it didn't mean anything to me, but I knew it was something that was a message for me. And it said 1 Sam 167. And I sort of figured it was a biblical reference. It clearly wasn't just a random license plate number. So when I got back, I pulled that info up, and sure enough, some of you may know the Bible well. I'm not one of them, but Spirit does speak to me with those messages as needed. And so the part that really jumps out is one interpretation. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. I've had so many of those kinds of messages floating around. And actually, one of the ones that really has been very strong in recent weeks is this memory of when I lived in Oregon. There was a Trader Joe's store that was a little outside of town. And I didn't go that way, didn't go to that store for a time. And then I met somebody that shopped there, and it got me kind of interested to go. And there was a stoplight that was like an off-ramp from a highway and another big sort of thoroughfare. And there was often a homeless guy parked there. And I often didn't want to go to Trader Joe's after a while, because it was like I was always going to be stopped at that light. And I've lived in Manhattan, I lived in Washington, D.C. I've had plenty of lovely and not so lovely encounters with homeless people. So I didn't really feel like I had a big judgment about it. But there was something every time that light switched to yellow, where I knew I was going to have to brake, that came up in my mind that really became kind of an aversion. And did cause me to change my route at times. It was like a thing in my mind. And, there are many things that meant to me at that time. There are many things that the Spirit was working out in my mind. But I think that's a big one for a lot of people, is a symbol of a homeless person. And Yuta and I were just talking about, a lot of the parts of my journey, and maybe she'll have her own stories of her journey about it. But there were a lot of times where I looked kind of like a fool in the world's terms, leaving careers, being without a sense of direction, not seemingly having a lot of resources. And there were times of going to a wedding with people from high school or doing various things that put me into arenas where I was with people from my so-called past. And I might have seemed kind of odd to people at times, not that I presented in an odd way. I'm sure I was dressed nicely and pulled together looking, but I kind of was without much to really relate to. And, that's part of the journey. The idea of the fool in the tarot, the fool card is like, we talk about it a lot, stepping off the ledge with just this little stick on your back with a little handkerchief that maybe you got 2 or 3 items in. We do become invited into being divested of everything that we think, often our resources materially, often our health or our looks or our this or that, whatever we've become attached to, we often get kind of a hard lesson sometimes about those things, not because the Spirit wants to do that, but because we might have really strong attachments or really strong aversions. So, we're invited into this journey of going deep within ourselves. And for me, I had to face a lot of my own inner judgments, obviously, but also seemingly judgments of others who thought either I was wasting my life or being lazy. I know people, a lot of projections of, is she like mentally okay? A lot of that nonsense. They had no idea what I was going through. So we can look on this journey a little peculiar to people. I know when I went into the yoga center, there were messages here and there of like, is it a cult? Is it safe? We can sort of energetically be scary to others sometimes because we're going into territory that most people don't want to go into, even though we're all invited into this awakening, even though we're all invited to go within. It's kind of a rare commodity.
Yeah, that's great. I think, yeah, the spiritual journey is full of paradoxes, and some of it is because of that so difficult to address seemingly with words and, explanations and stuff like that. And, there's so much that happens inward that nobody really sees. You're aware of it on your own inner knowing. You're aware of all of the stuff that's happening and what's shifting and healing. And yeah, on the outside, to some people, it can look like you're wasting your life. And, it was funny when you're talking about joining the yoga community and kind of getting this reflection back of, is it a cult? What is it? Because it just reminded me when I told my mom that I was that I was going to be joining the Living Miracles community, which is like a community based around A Course in Miracles, basically. It was very sweet. It was really cute, actually, her response. She's always been very supportive, but she did ask me whether I was under the influence of any drugs when I made the decision to join the community. Because it is something that just kind of, it's weird to most people, that kind of a path, right? Because it doesn't really seem like you're making any progress towards having a real life. And I was very happy to tell her that I was clear at the time of decision. And it just felt like the right thing. And, even this idea of doing things based on feelings, making big life decisions based on feelings, that's a bit weird to people. I
Mm-hmm.
think,
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking,
Mm-hmm.
because, and I think even when we say it, it has nothing to do with really emotions and it's not emotionally driven. There's an inner feeling that this inner heart spark starts to drive what you do in your life when you get really onto your spiritual path. So that's one aspect, right? And we can be faced with all kinds of stuff. I've been fairly lucky, I would say, in terms of the reflections that I've gotten. Because for one thing, my family's really small, so there's not a lot of people that can come at me. It's been gentle in that way, and I'm really grateful for that. And one other thing that popped into my mind is when I actually was then in the spiritual community, one of my favorite things that I discovered there was that generally speaking, nobody cared about anybody's age. It kind of also didn't matter how long somebody had been there in terms of whether people thought that you were helpful or not to healing and to bringing clarity. And so I was in my mid 20s when I joined, and being in a position where I could be helpful to much older people than me, that was really cool. Like, I was joining with people in their, like, 60s and 70s, and somehow it was helpful and it was accepted, and, there wasn't this reflection of, "Oh, you youngster, what are you gonna bring to the table that's gonna be helpful? You don't know anything yet. You haven't even lived a life." There wasn't any of that, and it's kind of been it continued going that way even once I left the community, that people of all ages are allowing themselves to join with me, and they're appreciative of how I see the world. And I really like that. And to me, that's just one of those reflections of that Bible quote that you shared, which is amazing, that when you come towards anyone with this desire to see from the heart and really make that the focus, and it's almost like this real willingness to find the connection, because there always is something. Yeah, it's a really lovely experience when you really get into that kind of flow, and there's so many miracles that can happen from that. And yeah, maybe we'll get into some of those.
Yeah, I was just having this conversation taken into the place of the amazing way that the Spirit works with us to deliver messages and messengers and, that license plate. I mean, I've always received messages in lots of ways like that. So that wasn't new, but the specificity of the message just really, again, it's been like this stringing together of little messages in my mind the last few weeks that just landed that license plate as a really big exclamation point. And I was just really in this place of, someone in my life having some things going on with the symbol of the heart. And I was having this flashback onto many years ago. I really felt drawn to a lot of the Egyptian mythology and spirituality and symbols. And I've always loved the idea of the underworld as a place for healing, not as a scary place, but as a place where we're really meant to commune with ourselves and with aspects of the divine in our life. And the idea of, at the end of the journey, that the heart's going to be weighed, that the heart has to be as light as a feather. I really value that kind of a message and that kind of an invitation, because it can feel very difficult to face oneself, at least in my experience. And my experience with this homeless person, going to Trader Joe's, there were things in my mind and in my heart that needed to go. And that guy was showing it to me every time. It's like Spirit landed that reflection every single time. It was like clockwork. And there was an element, it wasn't like I had a judgment about him being homeless or dirty or smelly or other things that other people might have. It was a moment of intimacy that I wasn't willing to experience. So I just love the way the Spirit orchestrates all of this for our healing. And I feel like my mind, when I look at people in my life, I feel like my mind's been pretty open a lot of the times, to seeing. I was hearing the whole namaste, it's a word that in the last 10 years has become very big of people kind of dropping that namaste, namaste, and having lived in a spiritual community of yoga, certainly was a word that was used. And, that idea of I see the divine in you is a really deep teaching. And it's not really a word that's like to stamp on an Instagram post. It's a deep, deep teaching. Can I see the light of truth that you are? Well, that can be a challenge. But I was telling Utah, I was seeing this morning and have flickered in and out of my mind the last few weeks. When I lived in Manhattan many years ago, I was doing service in Bellevue, which has a pretty famous psych ward, and was taking in, meditation kind of offerings. And I remember the first time I went there and I sat down to lead, a meditation, there were maybe 10, 15 people, men and women, all ages, all sizes, all walks of life. And I remember sitting there taking a breath before I started, looking around, and my mind got so elevated. And it was as if Spirit was saying, you're sitting with masters. You're sitting with the most incredible parade of Zen masters right now. That was the word for whatever reason at that time. It was like, don't look at these people as being in a psych ward, sick and suffering. They're sitting in a psych ward to show you something about yourself. It was so amazing. It was so amazing. The dance that the Spirit does to give us a different perspective and to show us, judge not, because you have no idea what's going on, young lady. That's a powerful, powerful message.
It makes me think of, I think it's some kind of Native American person that has said that, all the people that are sent into psych wards nowadays, they would, in their culture, would be the shamans and healers and the ones to commune with the other side and to bring messages through. So I always thought that was really interesting. And in some cases, probably there's really something that needs to needs to work itself out there for these people. But I think in a lot of cases, actually, this world really can drive you crazy, and it's because it's not really our home. So in a way, the ones that do end up there, they're sort of in the right direction, that this place is crazy and I can't really make use of it. And
Mm.
there's probably some spiritual help that is needed for these guys. But anyway, it just kind of brought that up into my awareness. They may not be as crazy as we think, and just makes me think of this experience I had when I was in San Francisco for a week shortly after I left the spiritual community. The whole time there was really magical, just, getting there, and the sidewalks are sparkly, and it was just like, this place is so lovely, right? I just felt really lit up, and my mind just felt really excited to be in this place that I never thought I really would go to. San Francisco never really was on my list, but then being there was really fun and really sweet and so many miracles. And yeah, I found myself on the bus one day there, and, it was a pretty full bus. Many seats were taken, and many people were standing. And they're right in the middle of the bus, right in front of me, was this man that was maybe homeless and was definitely drunk. And he was pretty loudly saying, I don't know what, just into the whole bus. And it was kind of like everybody was just trying their best to ignore this person, because we get uncomfortable, right? Because what are you meant to be doing in those situations? But my mind was so lit up just from traveling with the spirit, basically, that I sat there and I just looked at this man and I was just in this prayer of, all right, spirit, what do we do with this one? What would you like to do here? Right. And he noticed it because I wasn't looking away. I didn't ignore him. So obviously this man noticed that that was happening and probably felt like that was a bit out of pattern somewhere. And we ended up getting into a conversation about, I don't know what. I think he was telling me about his son and, things that he's been through. Complete stranger. And yet I just wanted to be happy and I wanted to be open. And because I didn't avoid the situation, there was just this beautiful connection to somebody that on another day, maybe I would have also ignored, just like the rest of the other people. But it was just it just ended up being this beautiful encounter. And, it just continued to light up my mind afterwards. I wrote a blog post about it because it was so amazing. And I think this is just the work that the Spirit really wants to do through us to be loving and, like our topic, not judge a book by its cover, because there's always something for us to learn. There's always something for us to expand into. And these kind of encounters are so powerful. And I don't really think about what sort of effect I might be having, but I'm sure this was an unusual experience for this man as well, because, he was clearly smiling and he kept giving me fist bumps and like he was just very happy, that there was someone that was able to meet him in that moment. And I feel grateful to have been that person. And when you let the Spirit take the wheel and do through you, there's so many miracles that can happen and so many beautiful experiences to be had here. And we just never know. Like you say, like we never know what's right and what's wrong and what's the best. So yeah, it's a really deep journey. And I just think there's so much potential for loving connections when we're really open to them, when we let the heart make the judgment, when we let, like God in your quote, look at the heart of somebody else. And sometimes I like this idea when people show like dissected organs and there's like a question like, okay, which one is from a criminal and which one is from, I don't know, some innocent person, or which one is from that race and that race. And you just can't tell, because in
Mm.
the end, even though we're not bodies, we are the same. There's some sameness that we can get in touch with if we really have a desire for it. And it's very rich, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a world of judgment. It exists primarily because of judgment. And I was just, as I was listening to you, hearing you often call forth a really important message, which is one of simplicity. And there's so much of the gift of that quote from the Bible that we've referenced. There's so much about it that comes down to simplicity. And the world of judgments of ourselves, of our fellows, of what's happening is so complicated and so heavy and so convoluted. And as you said, when we opened up today, what rushed in instead was this yumminess that is that heart space that we are actively engaging with by making these recordings. We want to be in that channel of that loving force, of that light. And there's such a contrast to them. We often learn by these contrast experiences and get purified through them. And here's one that I get to experience through this recording, just really, really being engaged with that loving energy that I want to be my everything. I want that to be, beginning, middle, and end of my experience. And that is not something that I can do for myself. I can seem to get, into a state of mind where I can ask to be shown how to receive that, ask to be shown how to call it forth with the Spirit. But it's all coming from grace and coming from the divine. And thank God we get these reminders. Thank God that there is, when nothing else in the world seems to have any understanding of that light of truth that is within me. I have known in those moments where I felt like the entire world had turned its back on me, I did hear and feel and sense and receive the message. I know what you're up to, Elizabeth. I know what your heart is up to. And that saved my life so many times. So this story that you've told of the homeless person being received by you, I'm tingling head to toe. Being received by you in the sea of people that have been ignoring and not seeing this person. What a gift of grace to be a channel for that. An amazing, amazing thing. So, yeah, it's a great story.
Yeah, actually, we pull cards a lot of the times before these recordings, tarot or oracle cards, and there's a card I didn't actually mention to you, Elizabeth, but I pulled the High Honor card, and just what I feel about it is that all of these encounters we have with anybody, there's this high honor feeling, right, that we can get into. It's not something we need to push for or, like make sure it's happening with everybody. But it seems like there's probably some encounters that are more important than others, seemingly. And this high honor feeling, it's like available, right? When we're really open to it. And I'm even just thinking, when I first came into your space, my mind was fresh still out of community, and there was a lot of stuff that I was working through still, and there was kind of, I felt like a little bit of a barrier around my heart in terms of connecting with you, because you come at things much differently, at least than than me. There was a lot of just new ways of thinking about stuff that you sort of brought into my awareness, and I wasn't entirely open to it all, but I can see just in the way things have progressed in our relationship that, yeah, it is this high honor, to be able to connect with you in particular, but also, with anyone, that it feels like there's no judgment, and there's a real sense of like, oh yeah, we're in this together and we're doing the same thing, even if it looks a little different here and there, but there's this sameness feeling, and it's an honor. It's different from awe, but it's an honor just to be walking alongside each other. And yeah, I feel like that feeling is available in so many different connections, and it can be a little overwhelming probably sometimes. And maybe that's why there can be little barriers up here and there, but yeah, that's what it is. I think that's the that's the beauty of having seemingly other people with you in this world, right? All these other people, and finding that sameness is that simplicity. Like you said, we come back to simplicity, but that's really it. And it's a really beautiful simplicity, and there's so much love in it, and so much love that we can receive from it. It's a lovely topic, and I'm glad you came through with it.
Yeah, and I just want to share two things. So first, that reference you made was from Malidoma Somé, and he dropped the body And he was a bright, bright light that continues to shine. And he was the one that referenced a lot of the healers and way showers are in psych wards. But the other thing was, I know the deck you're referencing, the High Honor card, I was guided to pick from the same deck. And I got the card that's called Occupation. This is the work to be holding one another in high regard, to be lifting one another into that state of mind where the cannons are going off to celebrate and salute and give reverence to all the way showers. We're all way showers for one another, whether good or bad, whether to show us the contrast of, yeah, maybe not the way you want to go, or to show us, hey, this pathway is your safer route out. This is the work, and the pathway that is the safer route out that Spirit's been showing for us today is through the heart. It is by being deeply engaged in our hearts. And for you and I to be able to be here in this moment, as you referenced, to even consider it, is because we've been put through years and years and years and lifetimes of purification. And we're open to more of it. We're open to Spirit stripping us some more. So it's a lovely, lovely topic, and it's been a really delightful journey for me today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well. Thank you to anyone who's joined us for this one, and we'll see you next time.
Lots of love. Bye for now.
Now.